John McCain strongly defended the Bush policy of lavishing tax cuts on corporations, including those that ship American jobs overseas. He made kind of a strange argument that the best way to stop companies from shipping jobs overseas is to give more tax cuts to companies that are shipping jobs overseas.
You support Senator McCain in this notion of reducing the corporate tax rates, including for those companies that are shipping, as he says, jobs overseas?
Well, a couple things wrong with the foundation of the question. First of all, there was no tax cut for corporations shipping jobs overseas, but it is true that John McCain supports reducing the corporate tax rate as well as keeping the rate for small businesses low, because to the extent that both create jobs here at home, they rely upon a favorable economic climate and low taxes. If you go to a country like Ireland, for example, you've got an 11% tax rate. What John McCain is proposing is that the corporate tax rate come down from 35 to 25. That would still make it higher than most of the competing countries. But right now, we have the highest corporate tax rate in the world, except for Japan. And so our companies can't compete as well here in the United States. Why shouldn't they go to a country like Ireland where they don't have to pay nearly as much in taxes?
A fair argument. Senator Bayh, what do you say?
Barack Obama wants to target middle-class families for tax relief, Wolf. Independent analysis have showed that he would do 3 times more for middle-class families than Senator McCain's proposal. He would make college more affordable with a $4,000 tax credit. He would reach out to small businesses and provide a 50% tax credit for their health care costs. And his approach to creating jobs is to provide a $3,000 tax cut for small businesses that create new jobs. So I guess the final thing I'd like to see, though, your viewers are pretty smart, and they'll listen to John, they'll listen to me, they'll listen to the candidates. But we've tried these policies before. Barack Obama has more or less embraced the approach of Bill Clinton, and the economy grew very well. Well, let me finish. Yeah. John McCain has embraced the policies of George Bush, more or less, and they brought us to where we are. I think most people would want to change.
Well, the argument, though, that if these American companies can go overseas where there's a much lower corporate tax structure, isn't that an incentive for them to go to Ireland or go someplace else and save money and take the jobs with them, in effect?
Well, the international tax system is very complicated, and there are things that effectively reduce the tax rate for American companies here at home doing business overseas. And Barack Obama wants to make it easier to create jobs. As I mentioned, Wolf, a $3,000 tax credit for every new job you create, accelerated expensing for small businesses. As a matter of fact, he actually has a lower capital gains tax rate. I know this is something near and dear to John Kyle's heart, a lower capital gains tax rate for entrepreneurs and people who invest in small businesses, because he wants to reduce that to 0.
Is it realistic, Senator Kyle, and you're the second-ranking Republican in the Senate at a time when there's a $500 billion budget deficit this year, and it could go up to $700 billion, maybe even $1 trillion, and the national debt has gone from $5 trillion to $10 trillion over the last 8 years. Is it realistic to think that any of these tax cuts are in the cards right now, given what's going on with the economic crisis?
Well, Wolf, I've got here a headline: How's Obama going to raise $4.3 trillion? This was a piece by Alan Reynolds in the Wall Street Journal this week, in which he points out that Obama would have to raise $4.3 trillion over 10 years to pay for all of the things that he said he's going to pay for.
But Senator McCain's very ambitious tax cuts are going to cost a lot of money as well.
Could I just finish this thought, please? Because your question was, in a time of economic disruption, to say the least, I think recession, do you want to raise taxes to pay for this kind of spending? And what Obama says is he's going to raise taxes on the wealthy. Do you know how much he would get? He'd get about $30 billion a year. What he has to raise is $430 billion a year. So in terms of the deficit, if that's the primary concern, Obama would create the largest debt that the country has ever seen, with more spending and more taxes, exactly the wrong policies when you're in the time of a recession. So that's why we need to keep the tax rates right where they are, except in a couple targeted areas on capital gains and corporate tax rates where you can actually increase the opportunity for job creation and not raise the tax on small business, which is what Barack Obama would do.
Let me let Senator Bayh respond, and I'm going to play for you this clip of what Senator McCain said at a rally in Denver on Friday, because he makes a similar point. Listen to this.
And to pay for nearly $1 trillion in new government spending, his tax increase would impact 50% of small business income in this country and the jobs of 16 million middle-class Americans who work for those small businesses. I'm not going to let that happen to you, my friends.
All right, Senator Bayh, go ahead.
Well, you've raised a couple of good points, Wolf. First, on the budget deficit, it is a big problem, and independent analysts have looked at the proposals of both candidates, both the tax side, which you mentioned, and the spending side, which John mentioned, and have totaled it up, and they've concluded that Barack Obama's would be actually several $100 billion better in terms of keeping the deficit from growing than John McCain's when you add up both the taxes and the spending. Tax cuts and the spending. Now, on the tax cut side, anybody who makes below $250,000 a year, which is the vast majority of Americans and the vast majority of small business people, is going to get a tax cut under Barack Obama. It's a question of priorities, and you raised a very good point. With the kind of deficit that we have, how are we going to be able to fulfill all these proposals? You're going to have to set priorities. Barack Obama's priority is tax cuts for the middle class. And if we have to forego further tax cuts for the well-to-do, well, in a time of scarce resources, that would be the priority that he would set. Remember when we cut taxes for everybody? When we had a surplus, we cut taxes for everyone. Now we no longer have that surplus, and if we're going to have further tax cuts, maybe we should focus on those folks who actually need it most.